Hello friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, my little corner of the internet where I share with you guys how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. If you're new here, my name is Kristen. I'm a knitter and military spouse who lives in Denver, Colorado with my family, which includes my husband, our dog Sherlock, and our cat Ebony. This is episode 47 of my podcast where I share with you all the things I've been knitting on, what I've finished, future projects, and what I'm currently working on. So I hope you have something cozy to drink. Today I'm drinking a Yogi Stress Relief Sweet Clementine tea, and I'm very excited to chat with you guys today. If you'd like to follow me in other places, I'm DoSo Knits here on YouTube, but I'm also DoSo Knits on Instagram and Ravelry as well. And that's where you can see kind of what I'm up to between these podcast episodes. I try to post these every 2 weeks, but over there you can kind of see what's happening in between, get a little more progress updates throughout the weeks, and little sneak peeks of what I've started between episodes. So it's a little snowy here in Denver today. The weather can really not decide if it's spring or not. I think they got the memo and threw it away. We've had some days of real warmth where we've gone on some longer walks. And then we have days like today where I wake up and there's snow. We could kind of feel this one coming in yesterday when we were on our walk. It dropped in temperature pretty quickly while we were out, and we could kind of see some of the overcast coming. Now, I really love snow, but I just wish the weather would stop tempting me. Just like, is it gonna be warm or is it gonna cool down? I just need it to make up its mind. I don't mind because I can wear my new sweater, and I love overcast days because honestly, it's always sunny here. So many days where you barely see any clouds at all. So I love the overcast and I love the snow. I just want to know if it's going to be warm or if it's going to be cold when I wake up every day. But anyway, I hope you have something cozy to drink, maybe something to work on while I sit and chat with you guys today. And let's dive into what I have finished since the last podcast episode. So the first project I have finished is what I am wearing. This is my Easy V, which is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter. I knit the size 52-inch bust, and I love this sweater so much. So I knit this in a natural merino yarn from DoSoKnits, which is a store in Germany. I used 3.5 skeins of this main color. And then for my contrast colors, I used Spin Cycle Dream State in 3 different colors. The reddish orange one is Rusted Rainbow. The blue that has some like red and purple brown tones in it is Shades of Earth. And then the yellow is Salty Dog. I love these colors so much, and I'm really proud of all the modifications that I made in my version. The first modification is for my neck ribbing. I went down an extra needle size. Now I have pretty narrow shoulders, and so I was trying to really cinch in that ribbing so that it sits a little higher on my neck. Now, after I blocked it and finished the sweater, this was still pretty wide on my shoulders. I don't think I could have worn a tank top or t-shirt really under it if I needed to. Right now I'm not wearing anything under it, but I do like to just throw on like a tank top or a camisole underneath my sweaters just to have. And with how wide it was, I think the straps would have shown. My straps are about here. So what I ended up doing is I threaded 3 lines of elastic thread through my ribbing. Started at the back, you kind of thread it through, cinch it pretty tight. The ribbing ends up being a little wavy when it's laid flat, but like on my skin you can see now it's laying pretty nicely, not really rippling at all. But what that elastic is doing is it's kind of cinching in while my body is pushing it apart, so it lays nice and flat, but it also is sitting a lot higher on my neckline. Now I guess I am losing a little bit of that V-neck effect. However, I really, really like this sweater, and I like it being up a little bit higher on my neck. I did also omit the short rows that are that are below the color work. In a lot of people's project pages, they mentioned that the color work or the short rows seem to add like a sort of bulge below the color work. Now, I also thought like maybe the short rows there wouldn't have so much of an effect, and I didn't know if I really needed the V-neck in the back to be raised. Now, before I added the elastic, the back was kind of low in kind of an awkward spot. I do think I have kind of a weirdly shaped back neck. I'm kind of trying to work on it. I have kind of like a weird bump there. I'm trying to work on it, stretch it out, but it was a little low. However, now that I've added the elastic, I think where the back neckline sits is in a nice flattering spot, and I don't regret not doing the short rows. However, I do think the short rows may will probably raise the sweater up in a nice flattering way that if you don't add like elastic in would probably help raise that up just a little bit so it doesn't look like it goes down really far, because it looked like it went down really low on my back. I did knit the body and the hemline to the recommended lengths in the pattern. I think they hit me in a really nice flattering spot. And for the sleeves, I knit them to 6 inches before the end to then start the color work. However, I do think my row gauge was slightly off from the pattern, so I did have to omit the final color work color on my sleeve, because you're supposed to do red, blue, yellow, your 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But I think this looks nice. I like the only one pop of yellow kind of on each of these, because the yellow kind of stands out a lot more than the other colors. So I do like that modification, and I feel like the length is perfect. There are no decreases on the sleeve, which I think are really, really, really nice. They look really cute. I didn't have to change my needle size or anything for the color work on my sleeve. I think some people, if they knit tighter, they might have to change like small circumference color works in the round, but I didn't have to. And then the only other modification I did is on the cuffs and the hemline. You're supposed to mimic, there's like this folded 2 rounds of stockinette before you start your ribbing, and it's on all of the ribbings. And I did it here originally on the hemline or the neckline here, and I was kind of hesitant on whether I was going to keep it or not, but decided I didn't want to rip back. If I did it again, I'd probably omit this rolled hem here as well, but I did omit it on the cuffs and the bottom hem, and instead I did a 1x1 tubular bind off, which I think looks really, really nice. I much prefer having that. I know, like, especially on the cuff, that rolled hemline, I would just do this all day long. So omitted that. I like the cleaner look instead. I don't mind it on the neck as much. You can't really see it, but if I did it again, I would not include it. And yeah, that's my easy V. I wanted this to give me like sweatshirt vibes. I feel like it gives me that, especially with the sleeves that aren't too tapered. They fit really nice, and it's an all around. I love this sweater. It was definitely an indulgence getting this much Dream State. I did use 1.2 skeins of each of the Dream State colors. So if I didn't do the cuffs, you might be able to get away with just 1 skein of Dream State, but especially since I did it on the cuffs as well, I needed both of those skeins. But I love it so much, and I was able to pull from Stash for the brown and find something to go with it to get a finished object, and I absolutely love this sweater. The goal was to get this done before our trip to Albuquerque, and I was able to do that because I'm obviously recording this at home, and I will try to get some finished objects wearing this while we're in Albuquerque. I think that'll be really fun and cute. So I do really love this sweater. I feel like it has hit the mark, and now that I've cinched in the neckline, I'm much, much happier with where it's sitting on my body. So then let's move into my next finished object. I finished my Oslo hat, which is by Petite knit. This is my first time knitting this hat pattern, and everyone has ranted and raved about it. I feel like everyone has knit an Oslo hat, and I haven't knit an Oslo hat. And now my Oslo hat is done. And this is what it looks like. So for the Oslo hat, you need DK weight yarn and you need a little more than 100 grams. So what I have done is I've held 2 fingering weight yarns together, marled them together, and this is the finished look of them. The 2 yarns that I held are both from a homespun house. This is Apple Crisp, I believe, and then Cheers, which this was the color from my non-superwash advent from 2022. So I held these 2 together to get more of a nice marled hat. I love the little green specks that kind of pop through from the Apple Crisp. And this is the hat. I love the texture the 2 fingering weights held together give you. And the folded brim here is super squishy and lovely. So I'll try it on. Now my hair's kind of at that awkward stage where like hats are still kind of tricky, but this is what it looks like. Now I mentioned on the last one that I still don't exactly know if this is my color. I think it might suit me a little bit, but not my normal like wardrobe colors that I typically wear. What do you think? Is this my color or is this a gift? Now, knitting this pattern I really enjoyed. There's like no purling at all, which is lovely. I'll show you. So this is it folded up. And then this is kind of what it looks like unfolded. So you knit it for a very long time, fold the brim over, and then you pick up and knit the 2 stitches together to get a folded brim. You then have to turn the work to get this backward section, and that's the section when you fold it up, your hat kind of folds along that line and makes it so that like if you folded it too far you would see this purl stitch, but you fold it kind of really nicely along that backward section in order to continue your stockinette all the way around. I had trouble with it kind of folding along that line before I blocked it. Now I think it's a little bit easier, but that then makes 3 layers here. So you have the double brim and then your 3rd layer of the hat. So this is going to be very, very warm, especially for days like today where it decides to snow. So I really enjoyed working on this pattern. It's just so much stockinette around and around and around. And basically once you finish that folded brim, the section of like after the folded brim goes very, very quickly because you don't have much to knit before starting your decreases, which they're more of like a visible decrease, but I feel like they look nice. So that is my Oslo hat. It's the first one I've made. I feel like I'll make another, maybe in a more neutral color for me. Like I said, I'm still not exactly sure if this is my color, but it was really fun to make. This took me about 2 weeks of knitting. I started it around the 17th of the month and then finished before the end of March. And I wasn't working on it like all the time. I kind of took it with me as like my stockinette on the go kind of project. And so I wasn't like only working on it. I feel like I got it done still pretty quickly with it kind of being a side project. I really cranked out a lot of it over the last couple days of the month because I was like, oh, this is really close to being done and I may be able to finish it before the end of the month. So I'm going to try and see if I can. And I was able to. So cranked out a lot at the end and yeah, really fun knit. If you want some stockinette in the round, but at a faster gauge because it's DK weight instead of fingering weight, this is a great hat, but it's still got like that nice lightweight kind of drape for the top bit, but all this warmth along the folded brim. I was gonna say cuff, the folded brim. So yeah, this is my Oslo hat. This was my first Petite knit pattern, and I have 2 more Petite knit projects to show you today. I have gotten a Petite knit bug, I guess. But yeah, that is my Oslo hat. I did want to say before we move on from the Oslo hat that each of those fingering weight skeins were about 100 grams to begin with. And they're both now at about 35 grams each. So in general, I used 65-ish grams of each fingering weight to get the adult medium Oslo hat. And I knit it on the size recommended needle. I didn't change that at all. I also didn't check my gauge. So it's probably pretty close. But yeah, about 65 grams each and 130-ish grams of fingering weight total, in case you want to pull one from like scraps. So then the last finished objects I have to show you guys are some dishcloths. Fiber Hustle did their annual dishcloth revolution and I decided to join in. If you saw my stash updates video, you saw that I got some Dishy last month in order to make some more dishcloths. And I ended the month and that revolution with 3 new dishcloths. So I'm just using the Grandma's dishcloth, the free pattern on Ravelry, and I'm using a US 7 to get my dishcloths. I use Knit Picks Dishy, and this is the Dishy Multi in the color Cup and Saucer, so it has some variation. And this was a leftovers, so I was able to get 2 of that out. And I'm increasing to the amount in the pattern. I'm doing the no eyelets version. And then for the last dishcloth, I haven't woven the ends in on this one yet. I was able to get half the dishcloth into the Cup and Saucer, and then I switched to my new Dishy Solids to finish off this dishcloth. This Dishy Solids is the color Dewdrop. This is the label. So half of it is Cup and Saucer and the other half is Dewdrop. And I'm very satisfied that it ended up at the halfway point. And yeah, I have the weave and the ends on this one, but those are my dishcloths. Nothing super interesting to write home about. I'm just enjoying that I can just kind of pick these up, whip one up pretty quickly when I need something like quick and gratifying. And each one's using about 30 grams total, so I can get about 3 out of a skein, and then I'll end up like striping or color blocking the last ones, like a bit of a skein to start a new one. I also have ideas to like do some stripe ones, so that's why I tried to get a nice color palette of Dishy to make some dishcloths with. So that's 3 dishcloths. I will probably add these to like a gift pile. I want to do them in like sets of 4, so I want to make 1 more dishcloth from this, and then this will be a nice little bundle of 4 to give away. We'll see. I might keep the half and half one and do like 2 in this and then 2 of the multi. That might be better. And then I can keep the ones that are more scrappy. I know that's what Kay does, but I also really want a nice set for myself. So maybe I'll do a nice coordinating set for myself and then make some coordinating sets for other people. We don't necessarily need that many more dishcloths right now, so these aren't something that I'm necessarily like feeling like I have a deadline to work on. I'm just picking them up whenever I need something quick, and especially as I'm working on more bigger projects and sweaters, having just something to be like, I just need to feel some instant gratification. I'll work on my dishcloths. So that's all of my finished objects since the last podcast episode. Some small dishcloths, a hat, and my sweater. But now we can move into what I've been working on. So the first project I have is in my new Jezebel Bee bag. This is the large version. And it's like a nice little walking kind of bag. Now I haven't actually taken this out walking. But you know, it's nice to have. So in this is my Sophie Shawl, which is also a pattern by Petite Knit. I am using a size down needle for this because I tried it on the US 7 or the US 8 and went down to a US 7 because I liked the gauge a bit more. And this is where I am at. So you start at this small bit and work increases gradually. I am now bigger than the smallest size and working my way to the medium size. The yarn I'm using is Heirloom Romney by Fancy Tiger Crafts in the color Nettle. And this is the last of what I have from my first skein. So in the pattern, it has like instructions for how to use limited yarn. And so basically you knit halfway increasing with your yarn and then start the decreases once you're halfway. So I originally bought 3 skeins to do this shawl in. However, I think I may, depending on how wide it is when I run out of this skein, just start my decreases when I start the second skein. Right now I feel like if this was halfway and I wrapped it, like it's a little short, but wouldn't be too bad. Feels nice and tall. So we'll see how far I get with this skein and then I'll probably make my decision. If it's the same or bigger than the medium size, I'll probably start decreasing. I originally was going to do the large, but I don't know. I don't know how big I want it, so we'll see when I run out of this. When I saw you guys last time, I was here. So this is the beginning. I was here and I've knit all the way from here to there. So pretty good. I have a little marker here, like just a little stitch bulb one, to kind of mark my progress each day. And the thing is like I worked on this for an hour at lunch yesterday and it grows really, really quickly. I haven't been like working on this super dedicated. it's kind of like my in-between when I need something that kind of requires focus but not too much. This has been something nice to fall back onto, but it grows really quickly. I think if I didn't have the markers, I wouldn't realize how much it grows, but it's really nice to be able to like just move that when you start a knitting session and then really see like, oh wow, for one episode of TV, I was able to do like quite a good amount. So I think since it's worsted weight yarn, it grows pretty quickly. And yeah, this yarn is growing on me a little bit. I really like the hand of it. It's a worsted weight 100% US Romney. It is pretty loosely spun, so it does split a little bit. And I know I personally prefer a yarn that is more tightly plied, but I really do like the Romney feel to it. It's like nice and sheepy, but also soft, but also rustic. It's really nice. I like it. It feels nice on my skin. It doesn't feel itchy at all. And there is like a little bit of like a halo fuzz to it. So for more detailed projects like color work, it might not be the most ideal unless you have something super high contrast. But for something like this, that's just gonna be like a simple scarf shawl, it's gonna be lovely, and I can't wait to have it around my neck. So it fits really nicely in this bag, and I like that I can just kind of bring it around with me. Someone also on my last podcast episode mentioned running a yarn marker up the side. So that is what this is, because it's a little hard to, it's basically impossible to see the increase that's happening here. But what I do is every time I do an increase round, this is like the end of my yarn. So if I did an increase round, I would then just bring it to the other side and it kind of catchers it along, and then I can count the garter rows in between the movement of this marker to then see if I'm on an increase round or not. But I'm also still using my row counter app as well, because also the nice thing about the row counter app, since I didn't start this running marker at the very beginning, is it tells me how many repeats I've done, and that's what the pattern has written for, like this many repeats is size small, medium, or large. So it's nice to have that there so I can be like, okay, I know I'm bigger than the small, but maybe I'm on my way to a medium. And yeah, that's my Sophie shawl. It's coming along. It's super easy, garter stitch, big needles. I like seeing it grow, and yeah, it's just kind of a nice comfort knit, honestly. So then the next thing I've cast on is living in this Mountain State Stitches bag. It's got mountains on it. It's one of my favorites. I think this is one of the small ones. And this is a Musselburgh by Isolde Teague. Now I've talked about this hat. Everyone's talked about this hat, but I've started a new one. This is for my Desert Vista Dye Works challenge for April. We're in April. This is the logo. I'm using my exclusive 2022 colorway. So by doing the knit along, if you do all 12 months, you get an exclusive colorway. And so this is that from last year for completing the challenge. My color is 77 of 84. So 84 people completed all 12 months of the Desert Vista Dye Works knit along last year. And this is a Tweedy base. So it's 84% superwash merino, 16% cotton acrylic neps, and 464 yards. This is the color in the skein. It is very, very colorful. The other day, Shane stole my newest Musselburgh hat. I mean, he just wore my Musselburgh hat that I had made myself. I had done it in Knit Picks palette. And he said, and quote, "If you want to make me another hat, this is my favorite hat. You don't need to ask me or experiment with other hat patterns. This one's my favorite." End quote. So for this month, I grabbed a couple of skeins of my self-striping from Desert Vista Dye Works and went to his office and was like, "Which color do you want for your hat?" And he picked out this color. And so I started it, and this is where it's at so far. It's so wild. It's wild. I have asked him multiple times if he is going to wear this hat, and he says yes. He says he's going to wear it, that I've never made him a hat this bright. That's why I've not seen him in a hat this bright. And so yeah, I'm holding him to it. He's gonna wear this hat. From a distance, I think it looks slightly better. When I'm up very close, I'm like, wow, this is a very wild hat. So I started this on Saturday. Today is Wednesday. I'm recording a few days early because of our trip. But I started on Saturday because we went to see the new Dungeons and Dragons movie and I wanted something to be able to work on. So I did the increases that morning. And then after increases, it's just stockinette in the round for like 17 inches or so is what I'm shooting for between crowns. And because of our trip, we have about 14 hours of car riding between going and coming back to Albuquerque. It's about 7 hours each way. So I figured just having something that was stockinette, endless stockinette, round and around and around, was going to serve me well. Now I didn't do all of this in the movie. I probably did about maybe 2.5 inches in the movie, but I've also been taking this, like when we went to dinner, I took this hat, and then I had a couple meetings the last couple days, so I was able to work on these then. It's just been super nice to pick up. I can knit. I really don't have to think about it. The only thing I have to think about is the beginning of round marker, and that's it. So it's been easy to just pick up and put down without any thought. I'm not minding the fingering weight yarn. I am using my Addy Novels. So they are the square Addies. These are the ones I always use for my Musselburgh. It's a 16-inch, 3mm. It's always what I use for this hat. I like the square needle a lot, and it's just feeling very, very comfortable. For the increases, I use Magic Loop, and then once the increases are done, I swap it over to this needle. And yeah, I have lots and lots of knitting to do on this. I do think the stripes on this are going to make it nice and like, oh, I'll just do one more color. I'll just do one more color. And especially since most of them are ending up to be either 1 to 2 rounds in general, it really makes you want to like keep knitting, or it really makes me want to keep knitting. So I've stalled out on Musselburghs before, or I've had them as emergency car knitting on my needles for a very long time. So I've always been worried about doing it for this knit along. I've thought about doing the Musselburgh, but the idea of having to complete it within a month, I didn't know if it's tangible for me. But with the amount of car riding I have and car hours, I'm hoping I'll be able to get it done. And I've done some pretty decent progress, and it's only the 4th day of the month, so that's pretty good. Yeah. So that is my Musselburgh that I am knitting for the DoSo Knits Challenge this month. And so then I only have one more work in progress right now. I only have 3, which is crazy. I came into April with only 1 work in progress on the needles. My Sophie Shawl is the only thing that carried over. Both my Musselburgh and this project, which is in my bag that I made. This is a Firefly tote. I cast both these on April 1st. It was a very productive Saturday. So this is a festival sweater my size by Petite Knit. So this is my 3rd Petite Knit project of today, my 3rd Petite Knit project ever. It's crazy. When I was writing my notes for today's episode, I was like, wow, I have a lot of Petite Knit happening right now. But I've wanted to make this sweater for a while, and with our trip, I wanted a sweater to take with me. And I had swatched for the Lento, and I just don't think the color is right. It's just not exactly what I want. I think I need to get a different color mohair to go with that brown. I want a warmer brown, and that's very like a grayish brown. So then I went through this searching of like what project to cast on to bring with me. So I had started swatching for a ranunculus, but I really didn't like the yarn I had picked with the gauge. I thought it was really, really open, and I just wasn't necessarily feeling that right now. So I stopped that swatch, and then I scrolled so long on Ravelry, searching and searching for a pattern to inspire me. I probably spent 30 to 45 minutes to an hour over multiple days just scrolling through sweaters, and finally I went back to my queue and I was like, maybe I'll just do the festival sweater. It's something already in my queue. I already have the yarn for it, and it's simple enough once I get the sleeve separation done. Honestly, before the sleeve separation, it'll be pretty easy. It's not necessarily like a spring or summer sweater, but with it still snowing, I'm like, it's fine. So I cast this on. I swatched, and I did a huge swatch. It's huge. So this is Knit Picks palette. I'm holding it double because it is a fingering weight, and this is a DK weight pattern. Now, my gauge here is 4.8 stitches an inch, and the pattern is written for 5.25 stitches an inch. I know it per inch and not over the 4 centimeter or the 4 inches. So my gauge is quite a bit looser comparatively. But I really like this fabric. Honestly, before it was blocked, it was a little stiff, and now it's a lot more drapey. And I really like how dense it is. I really don't think, like, can you imagine this denser? Like, you already can't see through it. So I didn't want to go any denser. And so I did the math of my stitches per inch and all the sizes available in the pattern. And so what I am doing is I am knitting the 44-inch size, which is the size large, but at 4.8 stitches an inch versus 5.25, my sweater should end up being about 48.7 inches. And that's pretty close to my full bust, but for a round yoke, I know like having it a bit closer is going to be okay. At least I hope. I'm gonna try it on. But I've cast on Saturday, and this is where I'm at. I'll stop teasing. So I have finished the folded collar and done the first bobble round. I've actually done this bobble round twice, but I've also made some changes. So I am using a US 6 and for my ribbing a US 4. Now for the collar, you're supposed to knit it double, and then on that final round you pick up from your cast on, knit the two together. I did that the first time and somehow I got off and like had 6 more cast on stitches than I did active stitches when I got to the end. So what I did was I ended up doing a sewn collar. I sewed it down and just whip stitched it together instead, because that's what I did on my Heritage Harbor and I really liked that process. And so I did that here because I think it's easier to see which like knit stitch goes to where it's supposed to fold to, because I can follow the line through, but I could not figure out the picking it up, and I think it might have been like my needle circumference was a little short. But this pattern has like a purl ridge that you do in order to fold it neatly, and since when you knit it together it folds on itself, but to sew it together to keep knitting, that purl ridge would have been on the outside. So if you want to do a sewn collar instead, either do that purl round as a knit round so that when it folds in half it's knit. But what I did, because I wasn't going to rip back 2.5 inches of ribbing, or maybe 1.5, I wasn't going to rip back halfway. I did a German short rail to turn my work inside out, and so then that way when it folded in half, that purl round ended up on the inside. So that was that, and that was really the only modification I've done so far. Originally, my bobble rounds, I have a 10 gram mini set from a homespun house that I wanted to use. It was blues and greens and really pretty, and it's what I bought this palette to go with. This kind of has like a bluey undertone, and I thought it was going to pair perfectly. But once I got to that first bobble round, I had this moment of, I don't think these colors are going to be enough. And I'm pretty sure I was right. So the pattern has 8 bobble stripes and calls for 100 grams. I knew I had enough yardage. I had done the math that way. But what I didn't think about is the fact that since there's 8 bobble rounds, but 100 grams needed, you would need more than 10 grams per bobble round. Because if there were 10 stripes, 10 grams would be enough for each bobble round. But there were 8 stripes and you needed 100 grams. So what I did to like verify this thought in my head is I knit the first bobble round, cut the yarn, weighed how much was left. So I ended up using 6.5 grams of that for that round. And then what I did is I divided the 6.5 grams by the total stitches here to figure out on average like how many grams each stitch was using, and it was like 0.02 of a gram was being used per stitch. But then I went to each bobble round in the pattern, because the biggest one is like, because you have one here, and then your big yoke, and then the body. And the math, the stitch count for the like big yoke one needed like 11 grams. And then the body plus the sleeve on each sleeve, I would need 12 grams. So my 10 gram minis would not have worked in order to do, because I wanted each stripe to be a different color. Now, if you had 8 20 gram minis, I think you would do it. You would be fine if you're doing roughly a 48-inch size. I think you would honestly be fine for most sizes because the body and the sleeves were needing the most, and they needed about 12 grams total. But 10 gram minis weren't going to cut it. So I had to rip back, and I ended up doing this white color instead. And this is more of this natural merino that I got from Das Wollschaft in Germany, and it's the white color instead. I've had this in my stash for a while. It's a DK weight, and I think with the gray, it looks really classic. I think it's going to look really nice. Plus, after doing the bobble round with fingering weight held double, that was very, very tedious. Because what you end up doing is you do like 3 stitches in one, and then you have to knit through the back loop of all those stitches. So with the double strands, it was like knitting through the back loop of 6 loops that you had to catch. So it was hard. And so I much prefer doing a DK weight for this round and then holding the palette double. I've honestly had no problems. It kind of like almost twists around itself as I'm holding it. So I haven't had any problems like only catching one strand and not both. It's working really nicely held double, and I think the fabric is glorious. The palette is 100% Peruvian Highland wool, non-superwash, and I love the hand of how it's working up and how it feels in my hands. And yeah, I'm working toward my next bobble round, and that's why I think this one will be a nice one for this trip, because you know, you have a couple inches between each bobble round, and so it's something to look forward to, something for me to keep knitting toward, and you can see that real progress. Some people on the project pages said that this bobble round was quite tedious, but I actually enjoyed it. I think going into it and knowing like the bobble round is not going to be as fast as a stockinette round, but that ends up being okay. I love the result of what it looks like. So I'm excited to take that with me on our trip, see how much I can get done. And yeah, that is my festival sweater, my size, by Petite Knit. So those are all the finished objects and work in progress that I have to share with you guys today. But I did have a few other things that I wanted to talk about. So the first thing is I got my copy of 52 Weeks of Socks, Volume 2 by Lina. I love Lina magazine. I get all their magazines. I have all the back issues, and I get most of their books. It's very rare that a book comes out from them that I don't absolutely love. It has the linen cover and a little bookmark, and I'm so excited for this copy. So I wanted to show you a pair of slippers that I wanted to make in here. So once I finish something, I want to cast these on. These are the Ophidy socks, or they're slippers. They're slippers. There's like 3 slipper patterns in this issue, and I think they're all beautiful. So it's just these like color work, beautiful slippers. And this is a DK weight pattern, and what I'm going to use is I have this Ravelry that someone traded me. I sent them some stash and they sent me this, so I'm gonna hold these two together. This has been living in my stash with no plans because it was just something I was excited to try, and I knew something would come along, and I think these two will go together so well, and they're gonna make such a cute pair of socks. So I'm really excited to cast them on. I feel very content with 3 projects on my needles right now. They're all a lot of stockinette. The Musselburgh is only stockinette. The Sophie Shawl is garter with a couple increases, and then my festival sweater is stockinette and then a bobble round every now and then. So maybe that pair of slippers would be a nice breakup because it's color work, but I think I may leave that until after our trip and then cast it on when we get back as like a little reward. Yeah, I feel content with 3 projects on the needles right now, even though they're all kind of similar, but I'm super excited to just like sit and go through this book. There are so many beautiful patterns in it, and I'm excited to actually work on these slippers. So just wanted to share this copy with you. I was very excited about it. And yeah, the other thing that I want to talk about is I have signed up for Vogue Knitting Live, which is later in April. It is April 21st to 23rd. I wanted to mention it because in a couple podcast episodes back when I was talking about my forager and adding bust darts, I talked about a class by Kim McBride Evans called Boob Camp. that is a Vogue Knitting Live class that she's teaching again. So if that bust starts is something you want to learn how to add into your knitting and want like a class experience to do that, that is the class, and registration is open. So just letting you know. I've signed up to take a couple classes. I've signed up to do a 2-session class with Patty Leon about sweaters and making them fit and ins and outs of picking sweaters. And then I'm also doing a like evening your tension knitting kind of class. I think all my classes are with Patty Leon, but I've bought her Knitting Bag of Tricks book and really love all the content in there. So I was excited to see some classes offered by her. And I think the classes are a really good deal. For 3 2-hour virtual classes, it's about $100. So it's really not too expensive. And that also gives you access to a virtual marketplace. And last time, that's where I got some of my Garthenor organic yarn. And most of, like, last time I did it, a lot of the vendors had like Zooms where you could talk to them about their yarns and different things. And a lot of them had coupon codes if you went to their like Zooms. But that was also a lot of fun. So that is later this month, and I just wanted to let you guys know in case that's something you might be interested in. I really enjoyed my last Vogue Knitting Live experience. And yeah, I recommend. I think I've done 2 different Vogue Knitting Lives. I've done 2 different sessions, so this will be my 3rd time taking classes with Vogue Knitting Live, but I just love being able to take a knitting class from the comfort of my own home, and also virtual shopping. That's always fun. So that's later this month, and I wanted to bring it up in case you might be interested. And with that, that is all the knitting content I have to share with you guys today. I am happy to sit and chat with you guys. I was feeling in a little bit of a funk when I started this, but I'm feeling motivated and I really just want to go sit and knit now. I hope you guys are finding a little bit of joy and comfort in all of your knitting, and I hope I was able to keep you company today. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. The liking helps us find other knitters, and subscribing lets you know when I post my future content. If you'd like more behind the scenes, feel free to join the Patreon. That's also linked on the end screen. And thank you to my patrons for all your support. And yeah, so that is everything today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love all the comments and anything you guys leave down below. So if you want to leave a comment, let me know. And I'll see you guys again very, very soon. I hope you have some lovely knitting over the next 2 weeks. And yeah, happy knitting.